Comiskey pull corner with such an easy way to get homers from any left-handed bat, and you got Schwarber who can hit as far as he can. That's a great spot for him to be at. I think they could, like I said, he could DH, and they could slide Martinez back into the outfield, or they keep Schwarber at left field and have Verdugo slide over to center and keep Renfroe in right field. Somebody mentioned something about Schwarber playing first base. I don't think they would try to do that, but I mean, there's certainly a bit of a hole there in terms of a veteran presence that could fit there. Again, I don't love their pitching. I think I like it a little better than the Yankees pitching staff as far as starters. I mean, the Yankees have a loaded bullpen, but the starters with Edwin Rodriguez, Nate Eovaldi, Garrett Richards. I mean, I get the Red Sox are winning games. I don't see how those guys win you games in the playoffs. You're going to have to rely on your offense. That's the only way. Then you got the Rays. They finally went out and got the power bat they needed in Nelson Cruz. His average has gone down. He's on my fantasy team, so I've noticed this pretty easily. But his average has gone down pretty significantly since he's been there. But he's still hitting bombs, and that's what they need him to do. They have a lot of position flexible players, a lot of utility guys they can throw in there, and they're in terms of the rotation, they're rotation by committee kind of. They're the poster boys for the start a guy from the bullpen, have him pitch 2 innings and bring another guy out, or have him pitch 3 innings, bring another guy out. So looking at this rotation, it seems like that would be the best strategy that would work. Then the Blue Jays definitely got a lot of offense. They added an ace and Jose Barrios from the Twins. Gave up a lot to get him. Last year's 5th overall pick in the MLB draft, Austin Martin, is one of my favorite college players to watch. He's really fast. He got some power. Can play outfield, can play infield. Can play everywhere. I mean, that's a lot to give up. And then they gave up another highly rated prospect that I'm blanking on the name for right now. But it's a much better rotation than you would think with Barrios and Ryu and Robbie Ray and Steven Matz, and then you got Alek Manoah and Ross Stripling on the edge of those. I mean, Stripling's been struggling a little bit with them. So I'm them, that's the guy I put in the pen out of those guys. And then the issue they have with the bullpen there is they got too many guys on the injured list. Like, you got guys that used to start for them or be key bullpen pieces for other teams. You got 5 guys on the 60-day injured list. That's terrible. You can't do anything with that. We'll go to the NL East next. The Mets adding Baez. That's a very, very, very good lineup now. Plenty of guys who can hurt you on there. Third base situation is a little fishy, we'll say, but VR's gotten it done in the past, and J.D. Davis isn't a terrible player. Dom Smith and Pete Alonso are hitting their stride at the right point. They really need to get more out of Conforto. He hasn't been playing nearly as well as we're used to seeing from him, and I think it's hurting their team a little bit. They are in first place, and they do have good starting rotation. They're also going to be missing DeGrom until next month, apparently. So, you got to survive pretty tight race in the NL East with some other teams that have improved. I mean, Philly improved their rotation. I mean, Kyle Gibson's never been one of my favorite pitchers or anybody I would consider an ace. But this year with the Rangers, he absolutely was putting up ace-like numbers. And if you can get him pitching close to that way with Aaron Nola and Zach Wheeler and a healthy Zach Eflin and Vince Vasquez, Matt Moore there, it's not a rotation you're going to go crazy about, but it's still a pretty good rotation out there with a lot of high potential guys. And then their lineup should be able to score runs as well. So not inconceivable that this could be a pretty tight race. You got the Braves making a few trades to keep themselves in it. And then the way everything else shook out, I mean, the only thing I can say I think I know for certain, but obviously don't know anything for certain. The White Sox are going to win the AL Central, and they have a crazy bullpen now that Craig Kimbrell joins Liam Hendricks. I hate that from a Liam Hendricks fantasy standpoint, but they have two guys that can close games. And then the Brewers, Willy Adames is hitting like crazy. They added Eduardo Escobar, another power bat. They got some solid pitching with Corbin Burns. I mean, they're obviously the ones you got to catch in the NL Central because they're winning the division right now, but I think that division is pretty much going to be theirs. All right, the NBA draft was last Thursday. Pistons had the number 1 overall pick and obviously took Cade Cunningham from Oklahoma State. Does a lot of good things for them. They definitely needed a scorer. I mean, Sadiq Bey and Jeremy Grant had great years this year, but they definitely needed the guy they can put the ball in his hand and count to go get a bucket, go lead the team, make a right decision. I think he fits well with Killian Hayes. I think Killian at this point isn't as much of a scorer as he will be eventually. He's a very good distributor and works very well in the system with the rest of those teams. And I like what they did in the second round too with Isaiah Livers. I think he can play, fits well in, and he can contribute as a sort of a 3-and-D bench player. Oh, I say 3-and-D because that's the term that's thrown around. He's not as good a defender as they need him to be, but he can be that shooter off the bench, the young shooter off the bench that they can bring in. Luka Garza was National Player of the Year. I don't see a huge fit for him in the NBA. I mean, I know he can pop out and shoot the threes. I think his defense needs to get better. He needs to get quicker feet to be able to fit around there. And then the guy from Florida State, I'm not really sure about him. I haven't seen much from him, but I like the first 2 picks. I like what they did there. Houston added a lot of good young players with Jalen Green, Usman Garuba. He's not a scorer, but he's a great defender, great rebounder, and he's a little shorter, but he's a very thick and strong body in the paint that they're going to need up front. He can definitely lead the defense. Josh Christopher, I think he was a projected lottery pick coming out of high school. Didn't have the year he wanted at Arizona State. It was still a pretty decent year. I like a lot of what Houston did. They're getting ready for the future out there. Oklahoma City, with all their several first-round picks that they have all the time that they keep accumulating, didn't love the Josh Giddey pick at 6. I mean, I haven't seen much of him because he plays in Australia, but I'm sure. I mean, to be considered in the lottery, you got to be a pretty good player. You got to have shown pretty good tape, had pretty good interviews and everything. It's just at the 6th overall pick, I want a guy who's, and this is just me, I want a guy who has more athleticism, he's more of a game-changing quality. This guy Giddey seems like a role player, a guy who'll come off the bench and maybe be able to score, but he's not gonna change the game for you. Maybe I'm wrong. I have no idea. I haven't seen him, but I don't think that's the kind of guy that should be, at least from what I've seen, that should be taken at the 6th overall pick. Now, Golden State, kind of like their team. I'm a little crossed with the picks they made. I like the players, and I like what they could be in the future of Golden State. I don't know how much they help that Golden State core of Draymond Green, Steph Curry, Klay Thompson that's trying to go back to a championship now. Andrew Wiggins can help them out by returning there. And, Kamiga and Moody are great players. I think Moody can bring them shooting off the bench. I think they're both really young, really raw, and like he kept saying on the broadcast, it doesn't exactly fit the time frame, the timeline of where they want to be with that somewhat aging core of established veterans that they've won championships with. The draft also involved a big trade between the Lakers and the Washington Wizards. The Lakers ended up getting Russell Westbrook for Kyle Kuzma, Montrezl Harrell, Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, the number 22 pick in this draft, which ended up being Isaiah Jackson from Kentucky, big man from Kentucky. And yeah, they brought back Westbrook and a couple second-round picks in some later drafts. Now, at the time, it left the Lakers with only 4 players under contract, with Russell Westbrook, LeBron James, Anthony Davis, and Marc Gasol. Since then, today, they added Trevor Ariza back. They brought Dwight Howard in. They signed somebody else. I can't remember who it was. But it seems like they're going to bring in these veterans. It's going to have to be on smaller contracts, because you look at Spotrac and their cap calculations, and they projected the Lakers to be $60 million over the cap. That's after signing everybody, including their pending free agents and everything. They also signed Taylor Horton Tucker to his RFA deal, so he will be back with them. But after filling out the roster, they're projected to have $60 million over the cap. So something's going to have to happen over there, unless the Spotrac numbers are just completely wrong. So we'll figure that out. For the Wizards, kind of liked it. And the Wizards also made a trade for Aaron Holiday. So he'll replace Westbrook as their point guard. So you'll have Aaron Holiday and Bradley Beal in the backcourt there. KCPs, I mean, all the players they got back are under 30 years old. They're all like 25, 26, 27. They've had success in the league. KCP, he's a good defender. His offensive game has evolved. It's still not totally consistent. He's not a star scorer by any means. But coming off the bench behind Bradley Beal, that is a very, very good spot for him to be in. Montrezl Harrell, I mean, he's a former Sixth Man of the Year. Really good defender, really good rebounder. He's good around the basket, smart player. That's going to help them, and that's going to help them up front. Kuzma's been going downhill since his first 2 years. He hasn't been counted on to score as much as he needed to before, but in his first season he averaged 16 points a game. Second season he averaged almost 19, and the past two he's been just a little bit over 12 in each season, and he hasn't been taking as many shots, which will obviously affect that. Maybe he gets to take on a little more of a not necessarily a star player, but a main character role in Washington. And then, I mean, that leaves you with Aaron Holiday, Bradley Beal, Davis Bertans, Rui Hachimura, Thomas Bryant, Daniel Gafford, Denny Avdija, KCP, Kuzma, Harrell. They have Cassius Winston as a backup point guard. He had a great college career and did all right for himself when he came in limited minutes last year, so we'll see what happens with him there. But it's not overwhelmingly great, but I do see some improvement from the Wizards. Well, maybe not improvement, because they did make the playoff bubble last year, but in terms of how their roster was thought of going into last season, as opposed to what they ended up doing, I think on paper it looks better and more balanced than I was thinking going into last season. NHL free agency has opened up. During the draft, there were a lot of teams that made some trades. Seth Jones was traded from Columbus to Chicago, and Chicago has since rewarded him with an 8-year deal going forward. You know, Columbus traded some other guys with Cam Atkinson. Carolina sold off their goaltender. I don't know how to pronounce his last name, but he's playing for my Red Wings now, so I'm going to have to learn that one. And they traded defenseman Jake Bean. They had a decent reputation over there, but it was certainly trade bait. David Krejci for the Bruins is headed back to the Czech Republic after being a staple for the Bruins for the past few years. So good luck to him there. Always a joy to watch when he was playing